Oh, 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 the dope show.
Well, we made it this far. I uploaded and you clicked on me. So let's continue this connection for a little while. This is the Dope Show, where you will find all things nerdy, comics, video games, movies, and after a couple beers, I may start talking some D&D. Tonight's episode, we are going to be examining part 2 of the Punisher Born series, of the brutal Punisher Max iteration of the character. We're going to be talking about what this means for the character of the Punisher if you choose to adopt this backstory. Now, if you haven't watched part 1 or part 2 on my YouTube channel, go do that now and come back. I'll still be here. So, let's quickly recap part 1. We are introduced to a character named Stevie Goodwin, who's been observing Frank Castle and both respects and fears him, because he knows something's not quite right about Captain Castle. He knows something's not quite right about a former assassin being placed in charge of common infantry. Full of misfits and sadists, we see that Firebase Valley Forge has lost all discipline and does not function like a regular military base. We see that a big part of this is another character we're introduced to named Colonel Ottman. Now, it appears that the upper brass have gotten wind of what's been going on at this base, and they sent out General Patton to investigate. Now, even though Patton's kind of, just your typical Warhawk cliche, he does decide to do the right thing and shut down the base. Now from there, we see Frank's very defensive and violent reaction. First, he pleads with the general on military terms, and then when that doesn't work, Frank murders the general by leading him into a trap. Issue 1 closes with The Voice, exposing Frank's inner BS and trying to exploit his desires in an attempt to get Frank to agree to a deal. Now, we don't know what or who the Voice is. That is left up to you and me. So issue 2 opens up with Angel getting high on what we can assume are some very tasty and very strong drugs. Stevie Goodwin shows up and interrupts and all but drags Angel out. So it appears that, this bunker that he's in is just, basically like having a crack house on the base. Now, once exiting, the pair of them don't get very far before they are confronted by a character called Coltrane, who appears to be the drug dealer on the base, or at least the one running that bunker. He has like this little henchman with him. And it seems that somehow Angel was getting high without paying for his substance. I don't know how that works, but in this instance, it seems like that's what was going on. Goodwin offers Coltrane $10 to cover the debt, but that does not seem to satisfy Coltrane, and it appears that violence is about to ensue until Coltrane sees Frank coming, and he knows he should just, cut his losses because, well, it's Frank Castle. So clearly Frank is very aware of the drug usage on the base and does not want anything interfering with his platoon operations. Goodwin partially lies for Angel, and he knows that Frank knows he's omitting information. Now, up until now, we knew that Goodwin and Angel were buds, but not to this level. Now, in Goodwin's monologue, as the platoon is humping the boonies, we find out that they don't even have to be conducting these patrols. This is all Captain Castle's idea, and we now know it's for selfish reasons. He's addicted to combat. And so are many other members of the platoon. But already we know Goodwin's not. But we do find out that he's there watching over Angel. Not only because they're buddies, but we find out that Angel saved Goodwin's life at some earlier point. Now remember, Goodwin does not have to be on this patrol, and he's scheduled to go home in about 5 weeks. So it really speaks volumes about his character that he would voluntarily participate to try to, repay the favor or just watch over Angel's back. Because Angel, we find out in issue 3, he's scheduled to go home in about 3 months as well. So for, Goodwin and Angel to be running around with this platoon, it really says something, when they don't have to. And Stevie Goodwin, he does not fit in at all to this platoon. So remember, in part 1, we see a lot of guys, really taking a lot of pleasure in the fight. We see them taking a lot of pleasure in, mutilating corpses, so on and so forth. So, now let's talk about the big firefight that takes place in this issue. Now, up until now, these patrols have really been one-sided, and there's been no KIAs. And, that's part of the reason that there's so much confidence in Captain Frank Castle. Right? That's part of the reason why a lot of them are willing to go out and do it, because it's all one-sided. Right? Because if they were taking KIAs every time they went on patrol, I don't care how sadistic you are, a lot of these people would not, basically the size of Captain Castle's platoon would probably be half of what it is. You wouldn't have so many people that are willing to go out and do this. Now, it just so happens that a squad of Vietnamese snipers catch the platoon out in the open, and, to say the least, it's not good. Some of the men fall apart in the middle of combat until Frank takes matters into his own hands in the form of an M60. Frank goes into full punishment mode and wipes out the snipers, and what's left of the platoon, they just sit and watch in awe. Now, afterwards, the squad is looking for survivors, or, they're confirming kills, and they find a wounded Vietnamese female soldier trying to crawl away. Now, she knows what might happen to her, actually what's probably going to happen to her, and she quickly pulls her sidearm and tries to blow her own head off. But she is disarmed by McDonald. And McDonald is the one that has bad scribed on his helmet. He's kind of like one of the lead big mouths in the platoon. Now, the female soldier is wounded, and she's laying on the ground. She's partially exposed. She was kind of showing her breast. And so, you get this really creepy shot of her just surrounded by a bunch of men gawking at her, as they discuss, what to do with her. Now, it is important to note that at this time, Captain Frank Castle is most likely getting a minor wound that he suffered during the firefight patched up by the second corpsman, so he's not around. Now, in his absence, McDonald decides to take the lead and proceeds to rape the woman, while everybody else sits around and watches and is probably just kind of cheering it on. Now, as before, Goodwin is disturbed and he turns his back on the events. So if you remember in part 1, when his comrades are, mutilating corpses and things like that, it always shows him with his back to it. Right? So he's not into it. He's opposed to it. So in this one, he even goes so far as to retreat into his mind. In fact, he goes back to 6th grade and he recounts a memory where they were, I think the names were Bobby Clark and I don't remember the other kid's name. So he basically recounts an event in 6th grade where you had one big kid who, probably like hit puberty really early, and he was fighting a smaller kid, and he was really injuring the smaller kid, and nobody dared to intervene out of fear. But this also really touches on something extremely real, which is, just the crowd mentality. Like, you have to remember, like, most people are followers. All right, I know like everybody thinks they're a leader, everybody runs their mouth, but most people are followers. And when you get into an event like that, that is how a lot of gang rapes happen. It's not that, okay, you have a bunch of dudes who are, just decided to rape somebody or looking to rape somebody. You usually have somebody that starts it, and then you have everybody else who's just kind of willing to go along. You have a lot of people that are they're afraid to go against the crowd. They're afraid to speak out against it, in fear of, either being hurt themselves or being ridiculed or being ostracized. And, you can pretty much apply that to many things in your everyday life, right? Like, imagine if, for whatever reason, let's say you decide to go out and, walk to the convenience store in some fluffy pink house shoes and, I don't know, Powerpuff Girl pajamas. But, I don't know, you're like a 6'4" black dude with an afro, right? Like, how much attention are you going to draw? You'd probably be up on social media, and, people be talking a lot of smack about you, right? And a lot of that has to do with because you're daring to go against the herd. You're daring to, be an individual. Now, something very important here that I was referring to in the previous episode. So when Stevie Goodwin starts talking about he's back in the 6th grade, it's important to note that was only 8 years ago for him, right? Stevie Goodwin is very young, so he's only about 19 years old. Because remember, this comic takes place, or the events in this comic are taking place in October of 1971. Now, of course, it depends on when Stevie Goodwin's birthday is exactly, but he references 1963 as him being in the 6th grade. How scary is that? Can you think back to when you were in 6th grade and imagine if 8 years later you were going to be off in some, foreign country killing people 8 years later? But again, that's very accurate historically. You had 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, just kids in this war, dying, being mutilated, being scarred for life. I mean, that's kind of speaks to something that we often forget about or overlook, which is when you put kids in a uniform, we very quickly forget that they are just kids. And I'm not just talking about the military. You put an 18-year-old in a military uniform and you give them weapons. It's very quickly overlooked how young this person is. You see this in sports, right? So, like say someone like some elite football player, somebody who's 6'6", 250 pounds, and they're fresh out of college. They're 21 years old, or same thing with the NBA. You see a lot of these, these young kids coming out of college and they're huge, just these enormous people, extremely athletic, and, they're in a uniform and we forget how young they are. And so, a lot of people get puzzled, when they act out and they get in trouble, either, within their organization, whether it be, whatever, NBA, NFL, or, outside, whatever, they got in a bar fight, they got in some trouble at a club. We forget. These people are only, 19 years old, they're only 21 years old. So, now that should be pretty scary when he states that, he was in the 6th grade only 8 years ago. And that's historically accurate. So you keep that in mind when politicians are trying to send your kids off to war. But going back to the rape, Frank sees what's been going on in his absence. And he strolls over and he puts a round in this woman's head, splattering her brains all over McDonald. And Frank states that there will be no rape and that they are only there to kill the enemy. He walks away and everyone is in shock, especially McDonald, who's laying there with his pants down, with his dick still stuck in this headless corpse. Garth Ennis is he's just brutal. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here before we can move on. So first of all, people get really worked up about what Frank did. And we're going to get an explanation from his own mouth later in this issue. But first, let's back up a bit. First of all, let's remember, she was about to blow her own head off before she was disarmed. And if Frank was the one to discover her, he probably would have shot her anyway, or shot her after some interrogation. Now, second thing, Frank is an enormous hypocrite, and he is completely full of shit in this comic. This is his 3rd tour. Before Firebase Valley Forge, he was doing wet work, and they probably kicked his crazy ass out. Hence, he finds himself at this unsupplied base of misfits. Right? Frank is purely interested in indulging himself and his desires, but will stand in the way of others on some, false moral platform, some false sense of duty, right? It's pretty interesting, seeing as how he murdered a senior officer in the 1st issue simply because, he wants to stay there, not for any war crime or any kind of moral transgression or any kind of abdication of duty, but simply because he wants to stay in Vietnam and fight. What an enormous hypocrite. So he is able to sate his desires, but nobody else is. In the next section, we catch up with Stevie Goodwin, who is, wandered off and, hiding behind a tree, and he's just trying to gather himself after the rape and the execution of the Vietnamese soldier. Now, Goodwin seems like he's, about to puke or break down crying, and he announces that he is more than ready to go home, more than ever. Now, I got the sense that this would be his last outing with the platoon, and Angel might just be on his own, right? Then we see an American soldier approaching in the background, and we find out it's McDonald. And, he kneels and leans into the river to wash off the blood and all the brains from his face, when suddenly a boot comes down and forces him into the water. As the shot zooms out, we see it's none other than Frank Castle. Who else? Now, there is an amazing drawing in this comic of Goodwin's face, and it just shows him, standing by, kind of cowering behind this tree, and he's just completely horrified as he witnesses the murder of McDonald. Right now, as if Goodwin needed any more stress right now. He then darts back behind the tree And we see Frank kick the body into the river and just stroll away. Punishment dealt out. Now there's a small monologue from Goodwin telling us that he kept quiet. And all the while, Frank was putting up this whole act. Now this is when they're evacuating. It appears, so when they were evacuating the area to return to Firebase Valley Forge, there's this small monologue from Goodwin telling us that he kept quiet about what he saw Frank do to McDonald. Now it appears that Frank was, this whole time when they were waiting to board the choppers, Frank was putting up this whole act like he didn't know what happened to McDonald, and he sent out, he put the platoon at risk, sending them out to search for him, and they're waiting around when he knows full well he drowned the man and hid the body. So I guess he was acting like he was concerned, so on and so forth. And Goodwin just went along with it. He just stayed quiet. And I don't blame him. So that's now 2 United States soldiers that Frank has murdered for his own selfish reasons. Now later we catch up with Goodwin indulging in some beer, and he's clearly still, very shaken by the events of the day. And, he's probably reflecting on the situation that he finds himself in. Then out of nowhere enters Frank. And he asks him, hey, what made you keep quiet? Why are you keeping it all on the low when you saw me drown that dude? Now, at this point, I imagine Goodwin is absolutely terrified. Like, you don't know what Frank's going to do at this point, right? Because nobody on the base cares. Like, it's just a free-for-all. But Goodwin gives an honest answer, and he simply states that he was afraid. Then he asks Frank why he did it. And Frank simply states he wanted to punish McDonald. Now, Goodwin then ventures a bit further into darker waters, and he asks why he shot the girl. And then Frank, he gives this big answer. He kind of just lays out the facts of life that he's learned from his experience over his 3 tours. And he basically just says, hey, look, number one, I'm going to lose the trust of the men if I put the enemy on a medvac. And if we turn her over to the interrogators, she's just going to get gang raped and shot in the head anyway. So Frank actually saw this as the most humane ending possible. And, again, clearly so did the woman. She tried to blow her own head off before, they could get a hold of her. Now, this is where the interactions between Frank and Goodwin will get a bit strange for the rest of the series. So as we see, as Frank is walking away, he tells Goodwin that he doesn't have to be afraid of him. Now, we don't really know, it's like he's saying, okay, you specifically are in my cool book, or if he's trying to tell him, hey, look, man, I'm not as crazy as you think I am. We don't really know. But to himself, Goodwin admits, like, yeah, I'm terrified. And, he then begins to reflect on the events of the day. And, it's not just what's happened today. Again, everybody's been observing this guy. Everybody's been watching Frank Castle. And there's just a certain aura about him that the guy is not all there. That's what he talks about. Like, he's always got this look in his eyes. And it's just always there. And so he knows, that Captain Castle's screwed up. And he needs to watch his step and, completely rethink his plans going forward. Now, this last part really begs the question, does Frank not know how others see him? Like, is he really that myopic? I mean, everybody knows he comes from Black Ops, and he was most likely kicked out for being a psycho. He's leading patrols, he doesn't have to. The colonel finds him completely annoying, and also wonders, why he won't just stop. Like, why does this guy keep coming in here? Like, just stop, man. I don't need your reports. I don't really care what's going on. Just chill out. Now, Goodwin has watched him execute someone that should become a prisoner and then execute a United States soldier by drowning. Now, Goodwin's a thinker, so I imagine he probably has suspicions about what happened to General Patton about this time. And then not only that, he watched him, hide the body of McDonald and then put on an act like nothing was wrong. Like he didn't know anything about it, right? And then he has the nerve to ask, what made you keep quiet? I don't know, Frank. How about your crazy ass? Excuse me, Captain, the transfer paperwork is out in the break room. Could you refill that, please? But, so what does all this mean for the character? Now, in terms of, the Punisher Max content, it fits perfectly, because those of you that have read it, it's just really brutal comics. It's amazing. Generally held up as the best iteration of the character, because it really just makes the most sense. But something that's fun to do is if you apply this to everything else, right? So let's say if you adopt this backstory and then you watch the Netflix series or the original Punisher, 1989. Now, of course, you can adapt the time and place to fit any of the wars that America's, involved in. But it really gets down to what's underneath. And I think that's really important for this comic. And, it's just a question that Ennis is asking. It's like, hey, look, did this guy just snap? Or was it already there? Was he already engaged in these kinds of actions? Right? Because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, Frank Castle was just this good family man. He was a Marine instructor, and then he just snapped one day and becomes this feverish serial killer. Now if you put this backstory in, it makes sense. Like, yeah, this is somebody who was murdering, his own soldiers, who was addicted to combat. He comes home and, he has, horrific event, that being his family being murdered. And then he's like, well, I guess I can just go back to work then, right? Right. But again, the fun part is applying this backstory to any of the, movie iterations or the Netflix show. Because that kind of really changes the way you look at him. So it's not just you're rooting for him while he pursues natural justice. It's like, yeah, this guy is so delusional and, so full of beans. But, you just can't look the other way. And that's not all. Remember, we still got 2 more issues to go. So by the time, after we finish, 3 and 4, you get another bomb that just drops into this backstory and just makes it all that more interesting if you apply it to the backstory. And we will talk about that in future podcast episodes. Now, coming up in future episodes, going to be talking about The Boys, the Amazon series. We're going to talk about season 1 and 2 and just kind of where we are so far and how it compares to the comic. Also going to be talking about some interesting things to think about in regards to Jared Leto's portrayal of the Joker. I know that's kind of a really hot topic for some people. Some people get really touchy about it. Pretty much all of us hated the movie. But I kind of feel like Leto's kind of being targeted, and I think it's a lot of things that people aren't taking into consideration. So that'll also be on an upcoming episode. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this episode to a close. I would like to thank you for checking out The Dope Show. If you enjoy my content, please share it around. Greatly helps out my channels. And I will see you guys in the next episode.
The Dope Show.